If you are convinced that your brain is the greatest asset you have, would that change how you treat it? And how would growing it look like? Being a believer, one of the best places for me to draw wisdom is spending time with the Creator. And when He put this question in my heart, I knew for sure this is something that I want us to talk about. Before we proceed, a big shout out to everyone who has been supporting the channel, whether it's with the likes and the comments and the subscription, and everyone who has been watching. Thank you so much for that. I truly, truly appreciate it. About a year ago, I listened to an audio by Al Nightingale. It's called The Strangest Secret in the World. And I got to retell it here on the channel based on how I understood it. You'll see it up on this link here. My greatest take home from that audio was that our brain is like a field. Whatever you plant in it grows. And today's video is very much connected to that. To start us off, I'll pose a question. Do you believe that your brain is the greatest asset you have? Because that should be the basis for our discussion today. If the answer is yes, then we can move to more questions, because we are going to look at questions and just use them to see how we can actually utilize this asset right here. We know that assets can be replaced, but unfortunately, the mind is not one of those. When damage occurs to this asset, rebooting it is not the easiest task, right? For assets to give the best results, they have to be put in a good condition and taken care of and maintained. Would you say that your mind is in the best state right now, that it has been taken care of in every way? I'm sorry about the many questions, but I just want us to start painting like a mental picture of how this mind right here is a big asset. Now, if you were to calculate the cost of maintaining or upgrading an asset, right? How much are we talking about here when you think about the brain? You know, some will cost you an arm and a leg, right? But we also say that some are beyond repair. Once damage occurs, that's it. The working process of this particular asset is based on data and information. Whatever data you feed it determines how it begins to process. I'll give an example. Have you ever looked up something on the internet so many times and now it gets to a point where once you want to search for something, it will actually suggest to you some of the topics, like the ones you've been searching before. That's exactly how our minds are. It's so funny that sometimes we are dumb enough to ask, how did Google know that I wanted to look up that, Actually, there's a time that my friend was sharing with me that she had looked up something on Instagram so many times, and now anytime she would go to the search place on Instagram, those are the only pages that were being suggested. And I'm sure if you are on IG, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And that's the same thing when it comes to our brains. We have given it enough information to work with to a point that it can now suggest to us things, right? I'm not a tech guru to know how, the easiest way to deal with it, but in my own simple way, I know how I've worked around it is deleting some of my search histories and also turning down the successive suggestions from the search, right? And I know for YouTube that you can actually click on do not suggest the videos anymore so that it stops bringing you, similar content. Our mind is the backbone of how we speak, how we act, how we think. Obviously, think should be there because that's where, it's the mind, the thinking. So when you have fed it with data good enough to insinuate our interests, it starts to show up in how we talk, how we express ourselves. People can actually tell this person has been reading a lot of finance books because we can hear how she's talking or how she's acting, how she's thinking about money, and so on. I'm sure by now you know where I'm going with this, right? You know that phrase, garbage in, garbage out? I don't need to add to that. If our mind is fed with garbage, it's definitely garbage that will come out of how we speak, how we act, the things that we think about, garbage. And if it's the other way around, if it's things that are beneficial, things that can actually build us, it will be seen in how we express ourselves, how we act, right? And sometimes we'll try to be very cautious, not to say the wrong things, but the tongue will slip and the real thing that is in our mind will come out. You can try to hide it, we can try to fight it, but at the end of the day, the actual thing that is in our hearts and our minds, that is what will come out, right? We will try to convince ourselves that our actions are okay. And the worst part is that, our thoughts are not seen. So we can hide in the acts and the words, but our minds will not betray us. The real thing of what we are thinking about is in your mind. You yourself know it better than anyone else. You actually know when you have been consuming garbage. Sorry for using that so many times, but I'm trying to say that it will be seen. It will be seen, whatever you've been consuming. And if you can get away with fooling people, you won't get away with fooling yourself, because at the end of the day, you know what's deeply, deeply in your heart. As we come to a close of this video, my plea to us is that we get on a personal development journey where we get to check our minds, and it will help us guard our most prized possession, at least if the mind is your most prized possession. It has the power to push us to the highest dreams that we've had, and the reverse is true. You know, we can actually sink to the lowest pit also because of our minds. I'm sure you've heard the phrase that as a man thinketh in his heart, so he is. And this is not to say that hope is lost if our minds are not in the right place. The journey to change that can begin at any moment, but you have to be ready for the ride. It's not an easy one. And there's also this other verse that I love that says, be transformed by the renewal of your mind. Just as the computer search engines have been manipulated to suggest to us what we need to see and what our interests are, we can do the same to our minds. We can feed it what we want it to suggest, what we want to talk about. We can actually feed it how we want to act. Just begin feeding your mind with what is healthy for it and what you think is important for you as a person. And honestly speaking, in the process of doing that, there are moments of sleeping and you actually go back to old habits, and you feed your mind with things that you didn't want to before, that you've done before, sorry. But that's not to say that's where the journey ends. You pick up yourself once again and start the process. That is how it is. It's not easy. Correcting things that we have known for years is not an easy thing to do, because actually some of them are now in our subconscious mind that we do them on autopilot. It will take work and a lot of consistency to change that, to change how the mind operates. Yeah, the results will come gradually, but it can be discouraging in the process of doing it. But you have to stick, you have to follow through with it. I truly love talking about this subject because it's an accountability for me as well while I am speaking about it. So probably in future I'll make more videos about that. But as of now, I hope you've picked something. Your mind is your greatest asset, and whatever you put in it grows. So choose wisely what you want to plant in it, and be consistent in the journey of trying to reform it if you want to change how it operates. Thank you, and see you in the next video.